Welcome to NC Political Tea, the home for conservative truth with a side of Southern charm. From the hollers of the Blue Ridge Mountains to the sandy shores of the Outer Banks, we've got our finger on the pulse of every political heartbeat in the Tar Heel State. So grab a sweet tea, kick back, and let's dive deep into the 2024 election madness.
Wow, it's great to be back.
I don't know if I'm going to wear these glasses. They're my temporary glasses, but I had to start out because I can't read without them. It's great to see you. It's great to see you again.
Thank you. Well, whatever you wear, it always looks good on you. Glasses, no glasses. I can't go without mine. So,
well, Sloan, where have you been?
Well, I'm going to tell you later in the show. But first of all, you've been everywhere. You've been to Trump rally, you've been on the cover of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I mean, you're everywhere over the last week.
Yeah, you know, we're both blessed. I mean, we're blessed to be in the right places to see what's going on in this country right at the right time and out of this country. So it's been a wild week and a half, 2 weeks, and I've missed you, and I know the viewers have too. So we have a lot to talk about.
Thank you. We have a lot to talk about. I mean, news happens at the speed of light. First of all, as always, we want to open up the show with polls, right? We want to know where things stand in the state of North Carolina. Let's go to what the poll is in North Carolina for Trump. He's leading, and this is a fresh news after the pick of vice president.
Yep, he's leading. You know, what they're saying now is we are a swingy state. That's exactly what they say. We're a swingy state that is swinging Trump.
Okay. I don't know how swingy we are. Right? I mean, yeah, I know. I get what they're saying, but, you know, do you think that? I mean, I think we're pretty solidly, at least on the presidential side.
Well, if you look historically, we are very solidly Republican on the vote. And I think, you know, last of 2020, we talk about this often. Trump only won by 1.3%. I think it's going to be a much bigger range this time. I think people are tired. They're tired of being, you know, not being safe. They're tired of not being able to afford things. They're tired of hearing about the border and seeing it. Now they're seeing it. So I think those major issues, and then her pick didn't help.
Yeah, no, her pick was, I mean, lackluster. Although anything's better than a dead man. So I think the excitement bump you're getting right now is this artificial joy they keep talking about. They keep saying that. I think it's to cover up for the dumbass laugh that Kamala Harris has every time she's asked a question that she's uncomfortable about or she doesn't know the answer to. So I think they're trying to get out in front of that and label that joy. And the bump we're seeing is, oh, thank God we don't have to vote for a dead man.
Well, I think the bump was much higher before she made her pick. And I think a lot of veterans that may have been on the fence, not that I know that there were many, are not anymore because this guy is a radical who literally lied about what his last rank was when he retired. He's done some things. He literally got out of his only deployment, you know, so a lot of people are seeing through the veil now. You can say you're serving your country, Jeff Jackson, all you want. And Jeff Jackson's done a better job serving his country than this guy did, honestly. This guy was supposed to lead the command for the reserves in Minnesota and got out of it right before the command was supposed to leave to Iraq. So, you know, a lot of soldiers and sailors and Marines don't take kindly to the commander who's telling them to go out there and fight, backing out and leaving.
Well, no, and in his campaign also, he said, I think this is for his Senate campaign. He said that he was in Operation Enduring Freedom. That has a special connotation. It means you served in Iraq. He did not do that. So, I mean, this is, and I have some slides, of course, the slide jockey over here for that. A lot of people are quite naturally in an uproar, but you've got him who is stolen valor. I think we could get out there and say that. He's going to be swift voted times 10. They're worried about that with good reason. But then Kamala admits that she was the last one in the room when they made the decision to run away, not withdraw, run away from Afghanistan, leaving billions of dollars in military equipment and leaving our men behind. So The two of those together have been the most disrespectful candidates in probably in history to the military
Yep.
we've ever had.
I agree with that. And it's not just that, a lot of people are, I'll be very safe about saying this. There are conservatives that will tolerate abortion, but no one, conservative or liberal, really wants an abortion at the 9th month on the date of delivery and after. And that's what this guy is all, he's signed into law.
Yes, definitely. I mean, there's a lot of problems with him, but here's what I think. Tell me if you disagree. If we over rotate on who the vice president is, I'm telling you, it's going to be bad because she wants to rebrand herself as well. I'm not Trump. I'm not Biden. I'm new and I've got this new guy. And as terrible as he is, and we have our faults, at least we're not the other two. That's a winning message. That's a problem. I do not think we should let her off the mat with Biden. Her running mate needs to be Biden. And every single thing that's happened needs to be wrapped around her neck.
Well, I think people are getting away from her being the border czar pretty quickly. And we need to wrap that back because she's the reason we're in this issue. 100%. She's the reason that Americans are losing jobs to illegal immigrants. She's the reason that we have this crime issue with illegal immigrants. I'll be able to speak one of these days, I promise, Sloan. And then the other problem is, we have a deficit in this country that is going to be handled by our children and our grandchildren. And she's a large reason why that is occurring, because this money is being spent on wars outside of our borders and people coming in our borders that didn't grow up here and didn't work for it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, there, in my opinion, there's a big risk in over rotating and talking about, this guy and how radical he is with the VP. The VP, in my opinion, has to be Biden. She has to be tied to Biden every single time we talk. It's a big risk. So we're introducing a lot of characters here on the story. We need to stay focused on the failures of Biden because that is her record.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
So we have to stay there. So, Trump's doing well. Let's go ahead and talk about what our voter registrations and switches are for July. Now, this is pre-Walsh.
Announcement, yeah.
Yeah. However, it is, getting to that point where it was announced that she's running, right? So here it is. Tell me what you think of this. Democrats are continuing to lose. They've had more losses than any time in history. Unaffiliateds are continuing to climb. Tonight, we're going to go over who those unaffiliateds are so we have in our mind who we're talking to when we're messaging and thinking about these guys. Okay, but what strikes you in this, Margot?
Well, this is the trend. This has been the trend. And if the trend continues the way it is now, we will be a Republican state by 2025, the end of 2025. I think it will rapidly move before the end of 2025. And I think that this is a statement. This is a statement to the Democrats that their message is failing and that people would rather not disclose their party than be associated with that party.
Yeah. I mean, there are a number of reasons why people don't want to identify as a partisan, right? But I think it's going to come into closer focus once we take a look at who these people are. By the way, that slide and the data came from Andy Jackson at the Locke Foundation. I want to make sure that I credit them with that. As always, we appreciate his hard work. Fantastic. Okay, so here we go. This is from the Carolina Demographic Project. This data, by the way, is 2023. It is not fresh, but it gives us an idea of who these folks are. Younger voters are most likely to be unaffiliated. Now, as it so happens, younger voters, registered voters, tend not to vote. So, no surprise. So out of 18 to 34-year-olds, 46% of those are unaffiliated voters. Okay?
Well, I think that's historically been the trend. Younger voters are two things: apathetic about voting and liberal minded. And they don't really get out of that sentiment until they pay taxes, which is or they have a significant event, which to us would be like COVID lockdowns, was a significant event that affected this country in a way that probably never affected younger voters like it is now. So to me, I think that this is an opportunity to really focus on the things that have happened under the Biden administration that have cost them, that cost them the ability to go to school, to go to a graduation. Some of them missed 2 graduations because lockdowns were, when they were in high school, and then they had something going on that they had a graduation in a 2-year program. They also missed weddings, funerals, big emotional events. And so this is a weird dynamic we've never been in before. And we're starting to see that actually permeate in the young Gen Z culture.
Okay, definitely. By the way, this is in September of last year. So when we look at, Republican registration, people who go out there and say, I want to put it on the line, 30% are Democrat, 23% are Republican. So and by the way, this is probably, we've probably gotten even more younger registration because Trump is pulling in and is more attractive to younger voters, in particular younger men. So we're not that far behind. And then we look at, the 35 to 54. So party ID, we're gaining on them. Obviously, look at this 55 and up range. These are your most likely voters, meaning they're going to show up. They're going to turn out. They're going to show up. Believe it or not, people 65 and older are the most likely to show up.
They got more time on their hands, and it affects their wallet more. I mean, let's be very frank about this. If you're headed towards Social Security, or you're on Social Security and you have a fixed income, you have a lot more to lose in an election than a kid who, at this point, just speaking in this point, than a kid that is still in college and not facing getting a job. The challenge is our economic numbers on unemployment are going up. And if you're getting out of college senior, getting out of college soon, you start to feel the effects of what's going on in the economy that affects your actual viewpoint on voting.
Yeah. Yes. And a lot of young men, politics is visceral. It's feeling, it's emotion, it's in your stomach, right? It's not in your brain. It really is. I mean, it's in your heart and your stomach for probably 90% of voters. And so this visceral effect on this trans stuff, that may have a pull. Although we're going to go over a fresh poll by Ipsos, who does a great job at polling exactly at this juncture what's really important to voters. But I almost wonder if, there's a yearning for, I hate to say this, but a real man that's
you're not. Listen, I believe that this generation is looking at a low T ticket versus a high T ticket. I mean that, testosterone being the T. I mean, I think that, men in general have been emasculated to the point that, and listen, think about this. There's another piece to this. A lot of people and men in this Generation Z that are just coming out of school or just would be in a college age, a lot of them would have gone in the military because that's a part of the tradition, and they're not doing that. And they're not doing it for a reason. And I think that demasculating men and putting women down, watching women get beat in the face in the Olympics, those are not, I don't care who you are, those are not normal.
No, it's not normal. And at some point, nature does have a role in this. Exactly. And you're going, there's again, politics is in your gut and in your heart a lot of times. And if it is, biologically speaking, there's no reason a male, a real one, would gravitate towards that. I mean, I get it when you're trying to get a date, right? And all the girls are liberal. And you're saying,
I get it. I see what you're saying. But I also think that boys and men, generally speaking, are taught to be masculine. And the morals and the mores that are coming up in schools go against their natural mentality to be that way. And now that they're in college, you really see it. It's projected. And it's 50-50.
It leads to a rebellion, right? It leads to a rebellion.
Yeah.
Okay. So, when you're hammered in something, it doesn't make any sense. Cognitive dissonance sets in, it leads to rebellion. So I'm just going to put this on the stage. I mean, this is, say what you will. We don't want to argue this. This is who showed up, metaphorically speaking, to vote in 2020. Okay. These are just the numbers in North Carolina. It is what it is. So when I showed you that slide before and we say, okay, your your partisan affiliation. Okay, 40%, 41% of white of Republicans are white, blah, blah. That's the N, right? That's the number we're talking about with unaffiliated. That's where we are.
But I think there's a big difference in who showed up in 2020 and who's going to show up in 2024. And I'll tell you why I say that. Once again, I'll go back to the things I said. African-American voters are sick and tired of being told, sit at home and collect a check. We're going to tell you how to vote. They saw through COVID. A lot of people, if you're in any spaces on X, what I heard repeatedly in rooms that were a majority of African-Americans is, first of all, they don't want to be called African-Americans because they're not African-American.
Black,
they're
black. We're white, black.
Yeah. But the other thing they say that really resonated with me are things like, what happened during COVID reminded them of the Tuskegee experiments, because there we were being told, mandated to take these shots. They're very big freedom fighters. And so I think you're going to see a big uptick in, and I see it on TikTok too, in members of the Black community and the Hispanic community that are very conservative in their religious values. They're going to stand up this time. And I say that after watching people like, there's a lady, I don't even know her name. She's a makeup guru on TikTok. She has like 9 million followers, never did a lick of political content that I ever saw. And this weekend, she said, I live in San Francisco. And I just have to tell you, I would never vote for Kamala because I live in San Francisco. And she just went through the
shithole. It really is. And so when we look at, this is from Ipsos, fairly good data. They do a good job on this. So when we look at, this is an exit polling. This is stuff we usually see after exit polling, right? In other words, why did you vote? Why did you pull the trigger? What was the prevailing issues? Okay, so I'm going to go over a few things. Inflation seems to be the highest. 52% of all respondents said that. And if you care about the so-called independent vote, right? These independents who may not vote, whatever, that's pretty consistent. So messaging, I'm going to talk about messaging here. Messaging needs to be key because I'm looking at the social media of and the websites of candidates here in North Carolina. We need help immediately on this. Immigration. Okay. So linking, a lot of us like to talk about education. You'll see education isn't that big of a pull. You'll make a mistake that way. So if you're running for school board, always link how immigration and crime and inflation, all of those issues, that's going to be your top line. That's going to be your top line. You cannot just talk about education and scores and numbers. It doesn't move the needle. And a lot of these school board races, Margot, they're nonpartisan. So it's completely candidate driven. Look at this pink stuff. So if you really believe in this unicorn of the unaffiliated or unattached voter, this political extremism crap. Okay. So, and I'm saying this because of this 17% worry about that. Here's why I'm saying it. A lot of candidates are getting caught in the defending themselves against some mythical extremist. Oh, so-and-so is an extremist, etc. Well, if you're going to run a campaign, and I've seen this, trying to be a Democrat light in the name of appearing not extreme or bipartisan, you will lose your ass.
Yeah, well, and I have also seen, and I'm sure you've seen this too, I don't know why candidates feed into that. I call it, feeding the trolls. Why do you do that? You're weak in your position when you lower your standards to talk to someone that is never going to listen to you and always be in that view.
Yeah, you're talking to and every time I ask candidates why you're doing it, well, I'm trying to appease the suburban voter, this mythical voter they're trying to appeal to. We know most of them are young, right? You're trying to appeal to about this so-called radicalism. Stop doing it. I believe this Ipsos information. I'm not taking it as gospel, but I do believe it. So this political extremism, again, it's not something that it's not driving people out of the polls. I promise you that. Top line, inflation, immigration. Look at abortion. Abortion, you would think it would be 70% with the way that Democrats are messaging.
I agree. And I think abortion is kind of one of those, you said it, I always get on people on, I'm pretty big on X, and not big like that one, but I'm just watching the pulse on X. And what I see is Abortion, if you're a one voter issue, then vote for that in your state legislature. Stop bringing that up in like the top line when we're talking federal elections. It has nothing to do with that.
Well, look at this independent voters, 11%. Okay. So even if we say, okay, Ipsos is wrong and really it's going to be 5 points higher or whatever, that doesn't move the needle. That is not going to move people to vote. Crime. I think that 21% collectively is low. You'll see the independents apparently, they think it's a pretty big issue. I don't think this is right. Only 12% of Republicans think it's a big deal.
But you said this is from last year, right?
No,
from this year.
Week. Yeah, this week.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that at all.
Yeah, it's this week. The high cost of housing. Let me tell you why housing costs are high. Because an unbelievable amount of illegals are coming in and they're being housed in places, or they're being given federal dollars to purchase homes, etc. That's why this is so screwed up. That's a big contributor.
It is a big contributor. And then you have to look at the Fed. They're just really not going to ease up, and they need to. If they eased up, the economy would rev a little bit, but they're just not willing to do that. And that's costing us.
Correct. That's right. And so, our messaging, it needs to be clearer. I wanted to show this guy who's leading the conservative movement in Canada. His messaging is spot on. I'm telling you, when you run a campaign, it's a collection of everything that's important. Your social media is important, your website communication. When you're not communicating, this is important. So he's saying that, look, I'm out here with the people. That's great. And then the second line is, here's what my opponent is doing, and let's do this, right? Here's who I am. I'm a common sense conservative, blah, blah, blah. Here's what I'm doing. Okay. So what I think our candidates are doing wrong, you're missing the attack. You've got to go on the attack. This is great. This is what people need to be doing. I see a lot of candidates going to GOP events. That's all they're doing. Oh, great to be with the Republican ladies of Western North Carolina or Mecklenburg. Nobody gives a damn about that.
Well, I think that's a safety net, Sloan. Get out of your comfort zone. Those are not unaffiliated voters. That's not who we need to cater to when the largest voting segment in North Carolina is unaffiliated.
And what do they care about? Inflation and crime. Inflation and crime. I don't care if you're running for education or not. People care about that. You got a message to it. So this is perfect. Here I am meeting with people, talking to people, right? Regular people. And I'm not bringing up my party affiliation. And I want to bring powerful paychecks. Here's my platform. Masterful job, because I'm going to show you this right now. And you're going to think I'm crazy. Check this out. This is the U.S. Olympic team synchronized swimming. This is campaign messaging. And here's what I mean. Whatever happens under the water, that's icing on the cake. You only have a few chances to score, and that's as long as you can keep your head up, your legs up, whatever. Messaging is like that. You only have a finite amount of chances to pop out of the water and be seen. When you do, you have to nail it, or you're going to get a terrible score.
That's a great way to look at it too. The competition spheres. You have only a certain segment to get to. Under the water, we keep things that we don't want seen, and we hold our breath in moments that we need to. And then you synchronize with your knees above the water. That's the scoring mechanism. So, I think that's a great analogy. You got to keep your knees above the water.
Yeah. And when you have the opportunity, whether it's social media, it's a video where you're making a video where you're one-on-one talking, whether you're in an interview, because look, if you don't have money in your campaign, earned media is key. Got to find a way to get that. But when you're coming up at any moment, it's synchronicity. It's your top 3 lines. And when you attack your competitor, it's 2 or 3 points. And you've got to say it every time. This politician did it. I'm not seeing any of our guys do it.
I haven't seen that kind of messaging since in my area. The only one I know that was really good at doing that was Michelle Woodhouse. And she did that when she was running for both the district chair office and then also when she was running for Congress. One of the things I noticed about her is her messaging was consistent no matter where we were. It was top 3 things.
That's right.
And she didn't move from that. Now, even in the debates, she would bring it back to those 3 key points that she wanted everybody in this district to understand about.
Yeah.
How close we were to Stacey Abrams. I'll never forget it.
In a debate, you never answer the question. You talk about what you want to talk about. And again, I mean, this is perfect. You attack we treat sometimes, or I never did, but some people treat a Twitter feed or whatever as just a time to make a flippant remark or whatever. It isn't. Every single time you have to think about it. There's an audience of people and you're popping your head up, your legs up or whatever for that moment. What score are you going to get in every single communication?
That's true. That's a very good way to look at it. Yeah. Speaking of Twitter, that's one thing I think you and I do well about North Carolina specifically. We try very hard to stick to our politics when it comes to, what's going on with Israel and what's going on in North Carolina. Yeah. So if you're not following us on Twitter, you should be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Sloan Rackmouth. That's my Twitter handle.
And mine is
Margot's is right here, right in front of it.
Actually, I have a W in front of the N in that one. So on Twitter, I'm actually Margot NWNC. But yeah, you should follow us. We're breaking news all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the Trump press conference, that was something that
it was glorious.
I think that Kamala has been in front of a teleprompter. Very, very sage advice that her handlers have given her because she's a dumbass. She laughs, she's awkward. But he is contrasting it. JD Vance is contrasting and say, look, here I am. Very impressed that he answers questions. What did you think?
Well, I mean, he's typical Trump. I pulled my notes up because it was so funny when I was watching him and he goes, well, that's a stupid question. But he answered it anyway. He's very himself. And I thought it was a marvelous thing for him to say, listen, Hillary was smarter than Kamala is. I mean, he gave her credit. I was like, wow.
Well, the thing too is I'm very glad that when they queued him up and they said, look, what do you think about Kamala picking Waltz over Shapiro? He did not fall into the trap of accusing them of anti-Semitism because you have to be, he can't. I'm just telling you. He was like, look, I think Shapiro was a terrible candidate, horrible guy, and Waltz might be even better than that, which is awful. Very Trumpian, but very avoiding the traps.
He was great on the Shapiro answer. I just thought that he was typical Trump with a twist. I mean, he was very honest. He basically told us, look, we're on the edge of a depression if we're not already in it. And I think that's hard for people to hear. But, listen, he needs to say it now because when he gets in office, he's going to have to deliver that kind of messaging to rev the economy up. And if he doesn't start talking about what we're really into, not what the news says we're into, people are going to flip out when they find out, hey, look, we really are on the verge of a depression. His candor was great.
Yeah, that's the messaging. That's what I'm talking about. Of course, he went off on crowd size going on. People know if you want to provoke Trump, go on crowd size. It's a side issue. It doesn't matter. No, I thought he was great. I really did. But again, you're going to really get him when you talk about crowd size. He's going to over rotate. So the stolen valor thing, as Jesse Kelly pointed out here, Margot, is look, I mean, this is a big deal. We're going to make it a big deal with older voters. Remember, we don't have a lot of undecideds, but we have a hell of a lot of people, Margot, we can get out in rural North Carolina. They're going to be pissed off about this stolen valor stuff.
Well, I think I want to take a little bit of a different spin. And I had to pull my notes up because I want to get this kid's name right. But, there's a streamer by the name of Aiden Ross, I think his name is. He has millions of followers as a streamer, young Gen Zer. And he had an interview with Trump this week. And it was he had 1 million people on the stream live. It crashed like 3 times. And then after that, he's had 100 million views. Think about that. Trump at least had the forethought to get in a stream with a younger Gen Zer to talk about their issues, not my issues or your issues. What are their issues?
Yeah.
I thought that was marvelous.
Well, right. It's putting yourself out there. I mean, that's what Trump does best. It's risking, it's risking all to yeah.
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah. And
It's
so
a great stream if you haven't seen it.
Yeah. I didn't see it yet. I must admit I was busy, and I'll talk to you about that in a second. But yeah, I mean, I think he's really making it a point to put himself out there. And again, earned media is huge, especially when you're being outspent.
Yeah, earned media without paying. He didn't pay for that. The guy came to him, and I actually went back and looked at his TikTok when he learned that he was going to have Trump on or be with Trump, and he had to keep it quiet. So he didn't even spend it up until a week before or 2 weeks before.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah. So there are a lot of those opportunities. I think Dana White is always an opportunity. It's free for him. Trump doesn't have to pay Dana White to say good things about him. No. Aiden Ross now is another one. Those free media attempts that have large followings, you can't buy that.
Ackerman. But so is Bill Ackerman and a lot of the VC giants. I mean, they have really been out there. So what I was talking about is that the Democrats are going to have a lot of money, right?
Oh, yeah.
And they're corrupt as hell. So you've been really good about talking about this Act Blue thing. I haven't been keeping track of the bouncing ball. Tell us about that.
Well, we're going through the FEC filings and looking at the Act Blue donations, and I have to say shout out to New Hanover County for this one. We paired up on this, but there's a lady in New Hanover, Valerie Booz, who has owned a home there since 2020. She doesn't own it, actually her son does. She rents a home, which is interesting because she also has another residence in Colorado. So there we have a residency requirement thing, right? And she has made $1.6 million in donations since 2022, but lives in a $205,000 house. So we know for a fact there's just no way that this is legitimate. Have we had a chance to corner her and talk to her about it? No. Did we look up her voter ID information on the North Carolina Board of Elections website? Absolutely, we did. And I think the concern that I have is if they're doing this in New Hanover County, why aren't we doing more in every county? We should have some data junkie who likes to do that kind of data mining to get in there, find these people. We need to be reporting them to the FEC. They need to be reported, for campaign contribution violations, because that's truly what they are. And how they're getting away with it, because people don't know, is they're not validating information on credit cards. And because they're not validating information on credit cards, it slides under the radar.
Yeah. And if we found one, to your point, is if a cursory view reveals one, there's probably 1,000.
I think if there's one big disappointment I have about critical disappointment I have with the NCGOP, it's that they don't take voter integrity from a data mining perspective seriously enough. I mean, there are literally geeks and people that love spreadsheets. I'm not an expert in it, but I sure do them every day, that would literally volunteer their time to take their county's information on the voter rolls to see who's active and inactive. If you have people that are over 120 years old, they're definitely not voting. I can tell you that. Or, look at this kind of information on campaign contributions to give the next set of people that should be experts that are filing complaints. If we had a factory assembly line of, I give you the data, you file the complaint, we could do better, but we're just not that organized.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've got some time. So we're doing the show. If we get 10 people listening, or if you could tell 10 people, that would be great. So let's pass it on.
Yeah. Anybody can get on there and download their county. If you want to get the information together and bring it to me, we'll get it to the NCGOP and say, you guys have the lawyers, let's use them.
Yeah. And we need to do that because look, 2020, I'm just going to say it. There were irregularities to the point where I believe that it was stolen.
I believe it too. And we're going to talk about some of the ways I think it was stolen and that we know they're going to do it again.
Well, the time to worry about that is now and not to bitch about it after the election, which is why we're going to hit you up with this info every single time we have a show, because it needs to be in the forefront of our mind now, along with this other stuff.
And I also think people are very comfortable with the election day being in November. That's not true in North Carolina. The election day in North Carolina starts September 6th, and that's 29 days away. Right. And if you're not paying attention and working toward that date and beyond, then we're really going to lose.
Right. And so let's get back to the messaging, guys. Here's what we are so far. We told you that the typical unaffiliated voter is younger, right? Less than 50. They're going to be either white or Hispanic, right? They're going to be, there's many reasons they can be unaffiliated. And the things that people care about are immigration, crime, and inflation. All of our messaging, every time we come up, guys, every single time we come up for this performance, every single time we get in front of our church members, every single time we get in front of our workers, it needs to hit on those points.
It needs to be succinct, but don't forget, everybody has to eat, and they're always at the grocery store. And when they stand in line, they start to feel their wallet burn because they know what's going to happen. So don't hesitate to say, man, this one's really hit me hard, because I can guarantee you, people in the line, they're not afraid. They're definitely not afraid to say it.
Right. Fast food. Nothing pisses, I love fast food. Nothing pisses me off more than paying 100% more for my damn McDonald's. Anyway, you know what I noticed? I was in London. I'll tell you. I didn't tell you guys beforehand because of security purposes, but I was in London for 9 days with a delegation of over 300 Jewish athletes from around the world in something called the Maccabi Games, where my son played, where he was, I have to brag, I'm a Jewish mother, the captain of the USA basketball team, which won the gold medal. So very, very happy about that. But I went to the Olympics as well, several events.
You guys went to Paris?
We did.
Wow.
We did.
How was it?
I have to tell you, I'm glad to be back home. I loved Paris. I mean, I ended up seeing a terror bust. I'm going to put the pictures up tomorrow in Paris. They were not messing around. On every block, there were at least 20, 30 guys with machine guns from the military, right? So I was very comfortable there. London, it was an Islamic country. I was not prepared for that. And there are a lot of parallels, but a month ago we talked about the election where the UK went really overwhelmingly for the Labour Party, which is for the far left party, because the center left made a deal with the out and out Hamas communist left to take more seats than they ever have. It is a disaster. The first day I got there, 3 young girls were murdered that had their throat slit by a Pakistani guy, because for the last 2 decades, 3 decades actually, but 2 mainly, the UK has had something called scatter migration, where they will put in 500 I'm going to say it, Islamic, they call them refugees, but they're immigrants who live off of social services. They'll put 500 in a village of 1,500. And they do not assimilate at all. And then if the villagers react to that, then the government comes down on them.
2 things. When you first were going over there, I've been watching that. You've been watching it on. Yeah, I was worried for you, so I'm glad things went well for you and that you were safe. And the other thing is, one thing I did that I want and encourage all of you to do if you haven't done it is, there's a guy named Tommy Robinson. He's a journalist, and he did a movie about one of the big things that set this off in England, and in the UK. You really should go on his Twitter and watch his movie, because it's the same thing that's happening here. The press hides things, they suppress things. The government works with these people and advocates for them. And I think that if you haven't seen that, you should see it, because you will see things that you don't expect here. That movie right there, it's my favorite. Yeah, it was great.
I'm going to tell you that I came back and I am changed. And I can tell you, if you ask, and I did, the average Londoner or people that live up north in the UK, hey, if you could take a round trip ticket to 10 years ago, would you speak out about these things? And they will all tell you yes. They will all tell you, I wish I hadn't have been afraid to say things. And much like we are, we don't want to be seen as a racist, etc. But they would tell you that. And so I'm going to speak up about it. I'm not going to be afraid at all. I'm going to tell you the truth about it. But, the crime has been unprecedented. So this happened several months ago. this happened while I was there, and the villagers started to protest, and then a Muslim protest began to put this rebellion down. And when I tell you that it's Islamic, I'm telling you that 10% of the population were not in full burqas or a hijab.
Wow.
This is another attack that was from May 2024. Okay,
Do you see the theme in all these, though? Not only is it the tension between two religions or two ethnicities, knives, a lot of knives.
Well, they don't have guns.
That's right.
Yeah, and they have swords. But I'll tell you what we already know. When a civilization, Thomas Sowell said this, when a civilization refuses to use force to maintain civilization, they will get barbarism. That is exactly what has happened here. Exactly. Now, there's a two-tier justice system going on big time. Nigel Farage is pointing that out now. He's in the Reform Party, which did pretty well during this election. But again, they're letting these Islamic freaks run free, with the exception of this guy. This guy is part of the Labor Party. This is going to tell you how radical it is. Listen to him at a protest yesterday or day before yesterday. Calling
children and women using those trains, destroying some relatives. They are disgusting, nasty bastards, and we need to cut all their throats and get rid of them all. I just want to say thank you all. I'm going to leave it now. And free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine!
So anyone, you could take it two ways. Anyone who disagrees with their way of thinking, they need to have their throat slashed. Or you could be more pessimistic. You're talking about slashing people's throats, free Palestine.
Well, it's so funny to see those women in the back clapping like seals. I'm like, you're next, lady.
So I have to tell you, there were some hardcore protests while I was there, and I've seen a lot of things, but, that was a lot. And it was a lot to be in the care of youth who were protested. We were not able to have our events at the fields and gyms that we thought we were, and we had to go to another place further north. We had ex-Mossad with us the entire time. So can you imagine having a youth group and having one security agent with each athlete at all times?
Good. Good. That's your precious baby. Good.
Well, having to live like that is, it's what you have to do. But I had the opportunity to interview over 200 people at this mission. So I was at this event with Jewish parents from all over the world. So the ones in Great Britain immediately said, oh my God, volunteer this. Oh my God, you got to make sure Trump gets elected. The Israeli parents, obviously the same. Now let's talk about the U.S. parents. It's interesting, but all the ones that lived in Florida, they're gung ho. They are more aggressive about pursuing a win for Trump than either one of us combined. The ones from California, and there were a bunch of them, a lot from Hollywood actually, and San Francisco. Outside of it, I would ask them. I don't want to offend anyone because I'm there as a thing, but I kind of beat around the bush. When they talk about things, they're just like you and I. When you ask them what they're voting for, they are Democrats.
Oh, wow. So they acknowledge that their Judaism is important to them, but they would vote against their own religion.
Listen, I view not selecting Josh Shapiro as, it's a practical matter. You do not have, there are a full 40% right now of Democrats that are anti-Israel. I'm not going to say anti-Semitic. I'm going to say anti-Israel. There are 20% that are anti-Semitic. You don't have time to get Josh Shapiro there now. This is a now thing, and then get to the convention and not have all hell break loose. You had to have adult like Walz. You had to. So this is a swing state. wide appeal. I mean, look, Kamala Harris has never, ever run in a race where she basically wasn't running against another Democrat. She's never had to appeal to the other side. Never has.
Well, she did pick someone who has one of the largest Muslim communities in the country.
Yeah. And we're going to get to the bottom of him. I want to share this with you, that every candidate on the Democrat side, you can bet your ass they have not been vetted. The media won't vet them. So don't automatically think, oh, well, Jeff Jackson, Attorney General. Don't automatically think he's been vetted because he's been in Congress, etc. Because there's only a few of us conservatives that know how to investigate. None of these people have been vetted. We don't know what we're going to find out, hint, hint, and what's going to come out. And even if we get out stuff about Jeff Jackson, this is a sidebar, or whoever, to get the mainstream media to carry that message, you got to reach such a critical mass. It's not even funny. Believe me, I know. I've been in this business for a long time. So that's why we need you guys to carry the word. We'll uncover and validate and test information to get out. We got to have your help getting it out.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why Josh Shapiro wasn't picked. Truthfully, I think they go through an extensive background check in the end. And I think that there were some things that we're going to hear about that probably didn't work out so well for old Josh. And I think that Roy Cooper rode the wave specifically to get his name out there because he's going to need the money when he tries to run for Senate against Tom Tillis.
Well, that's not going to be good. So I want to get to the parallels because I put this out on Twitter while I was gone, which, by the way, my engagement went to absolute crap because when you're in London and UK, they only serve it to the UK. So anyway, so this is London last week. So these are the kind of things. This is around 10 Downing, which is a couple blocks from my hotel. Yeah, I mean, it's a thing. It's a thing. But I just want to tell you, we have this here. Mm-hmm. This is Raleigh. Look at these folks. They are clearly Islamic. They're Islamic sympathizers. Some of them are Muslim. Muslim and Islamic do not mean the same thing. Okay. Fayetteville. Raleigh. Okay. Now look at this guy. This guy is in these protests, all these protests. This happens to be the Raleigh protests. This is the anti-Israel stuff. He's with a couple of different groups. And now he's wanted. He's wanted by the feds in connection with this. Whoopsie. I've got to fast forward this a little bit. Flag burning. See him pouring lighter fluid there. Someone lit it on fire. This guy lives in North Carolina. He's in all of these radical protests. So these guys are very clearly anti-American. They're anti-Israel. In North Carolina, we are very, very close to being on par with the UK in a lot of ways.
We are. And I don't think people understand that what you and I uncovered is they actually organized to go to DC in Charlotte at a mosque.
They are organizing in mosques. Now, what we're seeing now, let's zoom out globally. We're seeing oppression of radical Islamists in Bangladesh. They have run the leadership out and they are slaughtering Hindus right now. They are going after the rank and file citizens in the UK. They are. I mean, while I was there outside of London, some Islamists took, regular people out of bars and started beating the hell out of them.
Wow.
They are doing this in our streets and having uprisings, blocking our streets, deliberately intimidating. We have to use force to protect our civilization or we'll get barbarism.
I do want to bring something positive to this. And that is, last night I had a great conversation with the Conservative Muslim Coalition in Roanoke, Virginia. And they do not believe in any of this. That is not, And they are very positive that they want to continue with conservative values. Their
Yes.
concern is that the GOP in Virginia really doesn't have a place for them. I'm like, why do you make your own place? But you and I, we think differently. We think like we can make our own place. That's not in their culture. They want to feel welcome. So I just want you to know there are groups out there. If you live in Virginia or you know some Muslims, conservative Muslims, don't shy away from them. They want you to know they support you. They believe in a lot of the values we do. They believe in, they don't believe in abortion. They're not for this trans activism. They're not for a lot of the things, and they just want to live in peace, and they're voting for Trump.
Well, they're going to have to make themselves known. Unfortunately, they're going to have to do the job of standing up. Outreach is very difficult. But look, the first victims of radical Islam are Muslims.
Mm-hmm.
The very first victims. People don't talk about that. People talk about Muslims killing Jews because it's over the land, etc. People don't talk enough about Islamists killing Christians, slaughtering Christians all over the world. That's not a story. The only reason why it's a big deal is because of land, and because Jews have allegedly stolen land, which is a preposterous, outright provable lie. So this whole thing is being ginned up. Radical Islam is a serious problem for every civilization, including Muslim populations who are oppressed. You see pictures of Hamas leaders and Hezbollah. They're taking children, 3 and 4-year-old children, in their arms at rallies and putting machine guns in their arms.
Wow.
This
Well,
is,
I think there's a lot to be said here. And the goal is to say that, there's extremism, but there's also, a large population that don't believe in that. And we have to help them, the ones that don't believe in that, find their voice, because they are being drowned out by the extremists.
well, I totally disagree.
Okay, you're allowed to.
Yeah. I totally disagree that in this election cycle that we need to go and find people and ask them, have a litmus test of whether or not they're an extremist or not. For any,
no, that's not what I mean at all. If you took it that way, that's not what I mean at all. I just mean if they reach out to me, which they did, they're asking for help to show that they're supporting President Trump, our value system. How do we help them? I just said you have to find a way to incorporate into the GOP so they know you're there.
Oh, if people are coming to you and want to know how to get plugged in, yeah, absolutely. Or if someone is being silenced or belittled or whatever of any background, GOP or anything, that's not who we're all about. But I've always found that folks that really want to plug into the system, they're going to find a way. But I think that we've done too much of trying to bend over backwards to appeal to people that are our enemies and try to get them on board to like us, be they whatever background, even including Jewish people. I think outreach to the Jewish community at this juncture, we need to have some signs of life here if they're interested, right?
Right.
So, that's where I am.
Yeah. So we got one more, I think, big topic to finish us off tonight. And that's really, I want to talk about something we uncovered when it comes to voting. And this kind of ties into what we're talking about. And that is overseas voters in North Carolina. Because people don't realize you don't have to prove your residency to be an overseas voter. You don't have to prove that you are on the voter rolls. As a matter of fact, you can register to vote till the day before the election in November if you're an overseas dual citizen voter, but you don't have to prove your citizenship. So we know that's where the votes are going to slip through the cracks. If they're not going to check your citizenship or your residency, why, if you have friends that live overseas and are dual citizens and they want to vote, the residence requirement seems to be waived. So make sure they use the the North Carolina Board of Elections email address for the county they want to vote in, and that they get their vote in before the 7 o'clock deadline on election day, and that they register the day before. They can register up to 7 o'clock the day before.
So you're telling me if someone lives in Canada, right, that has dual citizenship here, you can say, okay, Tom, you live in Canada, but I want you to vote in the Wake County, North Carolina ballot. They can do that a day before.
Yeah, because they're not checking residency requirements. Those citizens that come through with the military voters, they both come through the same way. They're via email or fax. Like, I don't know who has a fax machine these days, but anyway, they're allowed to submit they're allowed to first register up until 7 o'clock the day before the election. And secondly, vote up until 7 o'clock the day of the election via email. And that what happens is the ballot comes in via email. It's transposed over to a ballot, a provisional ballot.
Okay. Well, I mean, I guess what you're saying is this is the lawfully allowed system to do this. We need to use that system. So
I absolutely am saying that.
So there are 200,000 dual citizens in Israel, and I think over 70% went to Trump in 2020. I think that's going to be probably 100%. As I said, Great Britain, those folks were coming up. I don't know if they're dual citizens or not, but I do know that in Israel, they have a robust outreach system. But what we're saying to you guys is, look, maybe if you are, know some expats or whatever, if you travel for a living and you can impact, 10 votes, which could impact even more, get them to vote in North Carolina, get them to go down ballot. We need any and all votes so we can look, the last election, three states, decided the election within how many votes was it?
40, a little less than 45,000.
Okay. So, we get, and you and I were talking on the phone last night about this. We get what, 350. I mean, we're home free, right? And
right.
That would be great. But
well, and that's the reason I was talking to that group last night is most of their families are dual citizens from Dubai.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, please implore them.
The Saudis are, yeah. And when I say, there are mosques here that are owned by Turkey. They're under Turkish law. They're not even under U.S. law. That's probably not the best outreach, but these, et cetera. I mean, we're doing business quite often with the Saudis, and you're right, and Iranians as well. Ironically, right. Iranian citizens, Persian, who come here. They come here for a reason. They're usually very pro-American. There's actually a lot of Iranian Jews that come here. But again, when they do outreach, yeah, I mean, that's where they're typically going to come from. But probably going into a mosque under the delegation of Turkey would be a bad idea if you're in the GOP.
I do that. I don't think I do that.
Yeah. If you're in the GOP and listening, start small.
Right. Well, I was very lucky. I have a friend whose brother is a dignitary in Washington, D.C., and the majority of they have a large family and following and a bunch of dual citizens in their friends and family. They live in Dubai, and they asked me to speak to them last night, which I did. And I also spoke to a coalition of voters in UK that are dual citizens. And I'm hoping that we can get in front of the Israeli dual citizens where, we could win this election big if we could get the dual citizens that we know want to vote for Trump to do it.
Yeah. And do that North Carolina vote. Great idea. We've got to be thinking out of the box. And so, all right, well, it's great to finally be back. We're really going to unpeel these things. And hopefully we're giving you guys talking points that you can use in the state from school board on up. Remember, it's very simple things. When your head pops up or your legs pop up from the water, you got to hit that mark every single time to be effective.
Absolutely. Bring 10 to win and stay synchronized in your messaging.
Love it. Love it. Do we ever have on our, I don't know, our bucket list, you and I doing a synchronized swimming routine? Maybe
never am I going to do that. You know why? Because Miss Priss here watched the documentary since I watched the whole Olympic synchronized swimming. And I found out that they put gelatin in their hair to slick it back. I'm like, no, that's not happening.
Yeah.
No.
My daughter told me that. And we were sitting there, of all things, marveling at how the eyeliner and the eyeshadow and everything stayed on. Yeah. We're way too vain for that.
That's a good note to end on.
we're way too vain. So we'll see you next Tuesday night. Share this with 10 people. Get it out there. Mainstream media isn't going to do it for us. You have to do it. Nobody's going to be our knight in shining armor. We have to be our own. All right. Have a good